Now, the one thing I miss about the Division 1 are the incursions. These were kind of mini raids that tested team quality, player skills, and the kinds of builds that players could come up with in order to be successful. Now, with the Division 2 expecting raids, I think that with these upcoming raids, we're going to be presented these kinds of opportunities in order to show how well we can play or how much of these obstacles we can face and actually come out on top. But I think we're going to face them on a different playing field. Now, if you watch one of the trailers for the division when the marketing was ramping up and stuff, I remember Julian Garrity stated that these raids will be some of the most challenging content that the player base will encounter, and it will be a wise move to get a good team to complete them. So where do we go from here in terms of preparation? How do we get ourselves ready for the raids? Well, first of all, I think that the raids will have a gear score requirement. So if you're leveling up and you want to jump into the raids as soon as they're released here in a few days, then you got to put some pep in your step. Join a clan, ask for help. Players who get higher drops, can carry you along and help you donate gear in order to get your gear score up. And so this is something that just, is helping you kind of progress faster if you're really excited and you want to jump in. But one thing I would say is this: do not pursue high gear score and sacrifice your viable builds. Right now, if you're in World Tier 5, you have a build that's averaging around the 450, 460 or so. Don't be in a hurry, just farm as usual and you'll be able to get yourself up to gear score 500. In fact, you'll be surprised to see that some items that have higher gear score may not necessarily do so well in stats. It's because the RNG kind of flips back and forth, and so you expect to get whatever it is that you get. Now, it's important to have a good build, and I know many of you who watch this channel see my build videos, but one of the things you don't know when I showcase my build videos is that I like to do so in order to get ideas in the comment section, because if that build is trash, it gets shredded by you guys, and you guys give me constructive feedback, and I can go back to the drawing board, rebuild it, and make it better. So the pros, or those who know more than I do in the community, make me a better player and a builder. You see, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, because I would hate to be. And so I put out my build videos and I ask you guys to critique it and give me feedback for improvement so that I can make some of the best builds in order to run my content much easier. And some of you also draw from some of the ideas that I put out there. So that's one of the fun parts of the community. So in preparation for these raids, go around the community, read comments, talk to people, read forums, and kind of see how you can start getting yourself in place and prepared for these challenges as they're coming up in these new raid missions. Now, my second theory about the raid is that we're probably going to see multiple variations of builds that highlight different aspects of the game mechanics. And what does that mean? That means we're going to see some build diversity. And right now, there seems to be a general consensus within the community that there's no build diversity. But I sense that this feeling might be misleading a little bit, because I feel like you just have to pick the role you wish to play and build to it. Now, I have to concede, I've yet to find a viable way to build a tank build, but that doesn't mean that someone doesn't have one out there. I mean, there are thousands, if not millions of people who play this game, and I would say for sure somebody has a build that does good damage mitigation. Nevertheless, it's a cover-based shooter, and even though the enemy damage was reduced as requested by the community, they still had to find a way to incentivize us to use cover in the gameplay. I mean, it's the enemies, I think, still have to hit hard in order for us to use cover. If not, we're going to play the game like it's the Division 1 where we can just face tank whatever we want. Another theory that I have is that the next specialization, which if you watch the trailer, you saw that there was like a little hint and it looked like it was a heavy gunner specialization. And permit me here to make a wild guess, but this weapon seems to require Top Raider to be out of cover for a significant amount of time. Hence, I'm making a guess, and this is a guess, that this specialization may allow for more tankiness. And if you allow me to go much more into the conspiracy theory, I would say all that shield damage that you see on the Richard Kaiser gear and the pistol damage seems to make it more of a possibility. If you want to add to that, there's also hazard protection, which is very prevalent in a lot of the sets in the game. And this makes me think more and more that this tank build is coming to the Division 2 in the near future. And this is me just guessing. And so even though there are many damage builds that are prevalent in the meta right now, I don't think that they're going to be really sustainable for raids. And I say this from just playing the heroic missions, because it's very evident that in those heroic missions, one of the things that comes in handy is like a dedicated healer. And another thing that comes in handy is someone who's skilled in crowd control. if you have these two players on your team, they make a big difference. Now, that doesn't mean that damaged players cannot go and rush and complete raids, but just like the incursions from the Division 1, if we're looking from a historical perspective, it was kind of nice to have good healers, good tanks, and good support builds in addition to your DPS in order to complement them. So I hope we start seeing videos that are celebrating things like crowd control, because right now we're seeing some healer builds show up, and a lot of people are commenting on my videos talking about their healer builds and talking about how they run them with high skill cooldowns. And I'm really interested to see builds like this as well. I've not necessarily paid attention on building a healer build. I'm starting to work on a support build, and I'm probably going to be showcasing that very soon. So I'm hoping that we're also anticipating a tank specialization, because my fear is that a lot of players forget that the pattern of this game is advancement and frequent change, and the game is actually a cover-based shooter. So many people that may be saying that armor is useless, yes, they may have a good concern regarding that, but armor is not useless in PvP. It actually works very well. And I think, in PvE, if a lot of people may be saying armor may be useless, then they're judging it from the way the enemies are hitting, and they've actually reduced the enemy damage that's dealt to players, and we're still having people complain. I think what's happening is people are not necessarily using a lot of skillful play. We're not using cover, and so we're exposed to a lot of damage. It's a cover-based shooter. Terry Spires, who is one of the developers at Red Storm, he said something at the E3 reveal of this game. Seeing all Division 2 players, playing the game, every single one in cover, the developers are not going to move back from there. They're going to make the NPCs deal enough damage to keep us in cover. And to be honest, I don't think it's a big deal. You can run a decent build that has high heals and, a lot of damage, and it will make up for it. I think tankiness in this game currently, without a tank specialization, is all about damage mitigation. So I hope very soon we start seeing videos that celebrate dedicated crowd control and dedicated healer roles in the game, and I hope a lot of members of the community are actually anticipating a tank specialization in order for us to be able to build tankier builds. Like, when I mean tanky builds, I mean super tanky builds, but only limited to specific roles in the game. And so I just hope that we don't forget that this game is all about pattern changes and advancement, and things actually getting overhauls and additions being brought in too. So right now, even though we may have these strict judgments on why we don't have tank builds, I think that's a question that we may be able to answer in the future. And so this brings me to the nature of the mission structures and the enemy types that we may see in the raids. Now, this video, I'm just, making hypotheses and putting these thoughts out there. And I feel like there are aspects of the raids that would make a difference as to how we play. And I'll take my point of reference from the incursions as well, where, in the case of Falcon Lost, you were subject to different waves of enemy types, and you had the APC, and you had to deal with that. Or if you were playing Dragon's Nest, these were specific to a faction as well, where you were subject to different enemy spawns who were all emitting and dealing a lot of exotic damage, including the environment. The environmental hazards were also there. So just imagine if you were playing against the Outcasts and they had a whole room that was full of poison, and you might need to have a dedicated healer, or it might be nice to have some hazard protection or some kind of health pool that will help you survive a lot of that exotic damage. And for those of you who remember Clear Sky, those constant grenades were the challenge, in addition to huge waves of NPCs, and it was very nice to have like a Nomad build or somebody with Final Measure to help mitigate a lot of that damage that was coming in from those APCs. So if the developers deliver, then I feel that these raids will be fun, and they're going to provide different challenges for players to build differently. And if not, then our damage builds will prevail, and we'll have a stale meta until the next update and content drop, which I hope that that's not the case. So in order to prepare for the raids, just look carefully at in-game mechanics that could pose a problem if they were amplified, and experiment on how well you can fine-tune your builds to mitigate them. Right now, I'm currently fine-tuning a hazard protection build, and I thought the cap was 64%, and people in the comment section said, nope, you're wrong. You need to go get more hazard protection if you really want to cap out, and I'm going to be working on finding pieces to do that. Somebody also mentioned the stop, drop, and roll talent, and I do understand, and I'm the biggest fan of the stop, drop, and roll talent, but I wanted to do a build that was kind of all-encompassing, and then maybe from there, do a hazard protection healer build to keep myself alive if there was a scenario where there was a lot of burn damage. And stop, drop, and roll has a cooldown, but your hazard protection is inherent within your player. So in regard to that build, right now the audience on this channel is literally shredding it to pieces and poking holes in it, because after some comments, even I myself can see that the build needs a lot more work. So I'm getting free build advice, and I'm looking for specific pieces in order to make my build better. So I'll say, in preparation, expect the unexpected. hope for the best and hope that we're going to have some more diversity, and the new specialization is going to add the much needed tank meta that we're looking for, a tank specialization, I mean to say, and then just give us, something really cool to grind towards. Upgrading a fourth specialization will be a fun process to go through if it's actually viable, and all that good stuff. So anyways, those are my thoughts and my theories for the upcoming raids. I want to hear what you guys think and what you guys expect to see in the raid releases, and I guess I'll see you in my next video. Peace.